All right, so now we're going to do 12.5 Kickoff. This is totally informal. I think actually for this one, a lot of us haven't seen the issues that Amelia and I have been working on. So what we have planned for 12.5 is not taking into account what's going to come over from 12.4. These also need to be broken down to other issues. We need to push them out to 12.6 so that we can create some spikes to dig into this new category or some technology that we're not familiar with. So I'm just going to start from the top. We're going to walk through these 4 issues, and I'll have Amelia go through some mocks for a couple of them. So we're moving into error tracking. Error tracking is based on an integration between Sentry and GitLab. Sentry is, I believe, the largest open source error tracking tool in the market right now. They've been great in integrating and having a partnership with us over the last however many months. So we're excited to continue that with them. And in the next 2 milestones, we'll be maturing error tracking to viable. So first and foremost, we want to enable people to get started on this platform really easily. This is going to lead to wider adoption. This is going to make it much easier for people internally across GitLab to dog food this. So today we currently integrate with Sentry. We don't offer people an easy way to deploy it. We want to add it, we want to bundle it with GitLab so that people can deploy it to K8s clusters if they have those and get running faster. So I was chatting with Clement more about this morning, and this would make it super easy for us to get the rest of GitLab dogfooding this, even after this first milestone, if we can add it to a few of our auto DevOps projects. So the proposal, add it to our cluster apps list. Yeah.
And I have a question. When you say cluster apps list, what you're referring to visually, right, would be that that page of like sort of one-click installs, like where you can install Prometheus and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll need to work closely with configure orchestration on this because they manage that part. And I know also that they are in the midst of reworking the way that that works because they want to be able to have those configurations be version controlled and not just be like, you know, you click and install and sort of it's, you have no history of it. So I guess all that is to say I will talk to some people there and make sure that they are aware that we want to do this and make sure that there aren't further blockers.
Okay. And then I also wanted to point out, this is not concrete. This is just based on Kenny's brain. There might be a Helm chart out there for this, but okay, we can talk to configure about that. Do you want me to tag you on this? Is that helpful? Okay.
I also know that they are dealing with a few requests like this right now. There's a couple of teams that want to add new apps.
Okay. If it needs to be a bigger meeting, totally fine. Okay. All right. Moving on. So actually, let's go look at, for context, what the error tracking table looks like today. This only has one wonky error in it because trying to set up a project with error tracking is really hard. So once this loads, I can show you what the error list, okay, here we are. So today we integrate with Sentry and we pull in errors for a particular project or for a particular application that's running in a GitLab project, and we surface it here. We provide 5 pieces of information: title, Details if available, events, users, and last seen. You can both go to the Sentry dashboard for this project or access that error in Sentry directly. So the next couple iterations, these next 3 issues are all about making that more functional, easier to use, and giving you more information. So the detailed view for Sentry errors in GitLab, we want to display more information. We're trying to reduce the time people spend switching in between tools. In an ideal world, we provide enough information in GitLab that allows someone to determine if it's critical enough to create an issue. That is a visionary workflow I would love for us to work towards over the next 2 months. Obviously, we are not going to rebuild Sentry errors in GitLab. That would be a waste of time. But if we can give them just enough information to make a decision, I think that's a great goalpost to go towards. Amelia, do you want to walk through the designs that you have?
Sure. So you can click on the default list view. So the idea for this issue would just be to remove the external link on the error title. And instead of it going directly to Sentry, it would open in a new page, which is the other screenshot. And then show some of the key details about the error. And we will also have a link to the Sentry detail exception as well, but we'll try to at least surface some of the information within GitLab so they don't necessarily have to go into Sentry. I think what we talked about as kind of a first pass is the title, the description, and perhaps some error details. And then one thing we heard from users is that the stack trace is really important, but I think probably that's going to have to be a subsequent issue. So I guess what I'm saying is the details here are still, we still need to discuss like how much of this we can include as a first pass and what we might have to pull out to be a subsequent issue.
Awesome. Do you guys have any questions on this? Perfect.
No questions. I mean, I guess that if we are going through this thinking about, things that will require more investigation, certainly this is one of those, figure out how easily we can get those error details, or rather like how much work we would need to do to format them or use them. And then also if there is an easy way to like render the stack trace in a useful way. Presumably it's easy to get through the API.
So there's a couple ways we could do this from a planning perspective. First and foremost, I think that we should commit to a little bit less, and then we can make that investigation part of the issue, or we can commit to a little bit less and create spike issues. I think we've been doing that. I don't know if everybody's happy with that format.
Yeah, and in this particular instance, I'd prefer to just start with doing the smallest iteration, and then hopefully in doing that, we'll be able to learn like how easy it would be to do the details part. For the stack trace piece, I think we could also just sort of leave that as an issue to be added on to this, and then we can revisit later whether we want some dedicated investigation into that or whether we've learned enough through what we've done.
I think I would advocate for a separate spike issue. That way we can kind of work on it more parallelly. It's just what comes to mind.
A spike issue for which part?
The stack trace.
Sure.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to let you guys create the spikes and schedule them and add labels to them, because we're doing it on a case-by-case basis. So for the issue we're looking at right now, over the next week, Amelia and I will refine it down to the MVC. Specifically, the stack trace is going to be something we need to investigate. We can add in 12.6 as an example. let's go on to the other couples that also have to do with this view. So I don't think that we have mocks here. We're kind of all working off the detailed view mocks because all of these features are within the same couple of screens. So we'll attach specific ones to the issues once we finish those. But so as to not have multiple discussions.
There is a mock-up down below. There's a thread below because there were some questions that were like specific to this issue. The mock-ups still need to be updated, but there are a few visuals.
Oh, there are. Okay, sweet. Oh, there are. Yay.
So this one would be primarily about adding that search or filter bar at the top. So this is just showing what, you know, the basics search or filter bar from like the issues page would look like if it was added here. And then on the next PNG. So I think this is, I mean, Clement had a comment on this issue that we're going to need to break it down. According to the issue description, these are the things that we would potentially want to be filtering: release, merge request, or commit. It sounds like another team is also working on the release piece of it in terms of issues. So I don't know if that's, I guess I'm not sure which is the most important here. And I'm not sure if maybe just focusing on one of these filtering items is a good first pass. And I think that's one of the things that it would be good to get feedback on.
I think that's a great point. Off the top of my head, if somebody else is working on release, I think that merge requests would be the most important one for us to focus on, as that's how we would go and find a group of commits that cause said error. Other people can feel free to disagree, and I do think that we need to learn a little bit more about that, but that's just mine off the top of my head. Seth?
I was going to say, I think technically, I don't know offhand, but my hunch is that technically filtering by the merge request will be more difficult because that is not something that is saved in the Sentry data, whereas hopefully the commit number is, but I guess I don't actually know for sure what's there. But if the merge request is something that we need to sort of cross-reference within GitLab, then it's going to be very hard or not worth trying to filter by it here if we're not saving it with the record.
I have a suggestion. What if we broke down this issue into 4 different pieces? Like the search seems like the easiest one. Could be a good first iteration. And then I think we could possibly do 2 of those in the first milestone. And if we have time, we can do 3. That way we can continually ship.
That sounds great.
Yep.
I think that let's go through the next issue, which is pretty well defined. And then in the latter part of this meeting, we can create those and get them put in 12.5 and then take a more realistic look at capacity. Okay. Awesome. And the remainder one, just kidding. Is manually opening an issue from a Sentry error. So that's exactly what it sounds like. Someone's doing manual triaging, they identify something that's critical, and they want to create something to track work with to help facilitate triage and speed up response.
For this one, just talking about adding a button to the row to add a new issue. And in terms of the format, like what would be pulled into the new issue, we're still trying to figure that piece out, but we'd like to follow the format that's already existing. When you create an issue from Sentry in GitLab, we have examples of that, so we'd like to follow that format. but we're still trying to figure out exactly what that would mean. And I think also out of scope for this one would be like attaching that error to an existing issue, though that would probably be something that would be nice to add in the future.
That's a great idea. Let's get an issue for that. Okay.
Just thinking about the workflow of having a button on every row, I think the button would then take you to a new page. So you can only ever click one of these buttons, but we're having them on every row. Would it make more sense to just have the new issue on the detail page rather than list page? Or we want to be able to quickly add it just for an issue from the list?
That's a good question. I don't know if you would have enough information from this list page. And the idea was that you could, if you knew something was important just by seeing the title, you could, you know, without having to go to the detail page, just create an issue. But perhaps there is never enough information here on this page. Then you would always need to go to the detail page first. That's, you know, a good open question.
Can we ask our existing team members to see whether that's useful or not as a first pass?
That's a great suggestion. Yeah. We can absolutely put it in front of you guys. I mean, one of the nice things about this product category is the entire engineering team will get to dog food it. So we have a plethora of venues of feedback.
Perhaps, since we don't know the answer to that, and maybe to Simon's point, what if the first iteration was just adding the new issue button onto the detail page?
I'm very happy with that. Amelia, what do you think?
Yeah, that's fine until we find out more information. And I think we're still trying to figure out how all of those buttons will work because there's many buttons and where they should all live and how they should interact is still kind of an open question. So that would probably be a safe way forward.
Awesome. So I'm going to recap. This was a great review. From the top, just to go through things that we wanted to break down or punt on, and we're all going to pick an issue and do it right now. Deploy Sentry to cluster, well-defined, will require some investigation, but it in and of itself can remain a single issue. Great. Detailed view for Sentry errors in GitLab needs to be broken out. I mean, at a very first pass, we have improving the layout and look of the existing list. And then we have the error detail page in and of itself. So those could be two there. Then we have the addition of the issue button here. So creating an issue from an error just from the error detail page will be an additional issue. Do we want to create an issue for the creation of issues from the list view, or shall we wait and see if that's a pattern that we want to support?
Yeah. I would say that we wait.
Wait. Okay, great.
Also, on the detail page, other issues will be, well, I think this is what we talked about. Adding the error details would be a follow-up issue. And then adding the stack trace would be a follow-up issue, but first we would spike that out.
Yep.
Which would also be an issue.
And so we have embed Sentry stack trace in an issue over here. Already created that one.
Cool.
And then filtering the error list by release, merge request, and commit. We talked about splitting into one per essentially ping that Amelia created. So adding search or filter results. And then adding to that the release and or the merge request and or the commit. And so from that we have 4. Clement, did I capture all those ideas?
Yep.
Great. All right. I will start breaking up issues for detailed view for Sentry errors in GitLab. Do a couple people want to take filter error by this one? We've got 4 issues to create there.
I can take that.
Great.
So should one of those issues supplant this issue, and then there would be 3 more additional issues, or is there, we have some sort of parent-child?
This sounds like a really good scenario for an epic. So if you want to start creating those issues, I'll promote this guy to an epic and we'll link them.
Okay.
And then manually open an issue from a Sentry error will become an epic as well. And we'll have the error details page and then the list one. Is that what I just said? Simon, do you want to create those 2? Would that work for you?
Sure.
Okay, sweet. And I guess we don't need to sit and all create those together. Why don't we create those and then people just Slack them to me and I will organize them after the call. Awesome. Okay, and the last one, this is not product feature related. This is something that I tried to do myself and I need some help with. So we've got this health demo project that is in a reasonable state. I used a project template for it. I used the Spring app template, which is written in Java, which severely limited my ability to get help because a lot of people don't know Java. So I would like us to stand up a demo project for the operations section that we can use for testing existing features, feature assurance, screenshots, demoing, visualization, new ideas, and so on and so forth. We'll need a light, medium weight application that we can deploy and then integrate Sentry with. We'll get all other features integrated, but we'll start with Sentry as that's the one we're working on with right now. I suggested a name for this. Let me fix the formatting here, which is Tanuki Incorporated. And then our URL will be tanuki-inc. And then anybody can join it without having to ask.
I don't know if error tracking and monitoring stuff will be public. It might be scoped to permissions.
Okay, maybe this is wrong. This is the wrong word to use. I meant so that we don't have to add every member of the health team.
Yeah, we'd have probably to put in the GitLab org group, and then that would work.
Okay, perfect. So this is another one that I want to do in 12.4. So once we get all of those issues broken out and I've organized, I'm sorry, in 12.5, and I've organized them into epics, we will extract the MVCs for each one of these issues. Anybody have any questions? Fantastic. We'll do another final review next Thursday, I think. Okay, awesome, guys. Take care, have a good evening, and a good day for Sean and Simon.